Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in Washington as the world is processing a stunning proposal from President Trump that would upend decades of U.S. policy in the Middle East. The president is calling for U.S. ownership of Gaza and relocating the 2 million Palestinians who live there to other countries. Trump adds that will then give the U.S. an opportunity to develop the area into a worldwide destination. He also says he's not ruling out military force to make this happen, something the White House tried to explain just moments ago.
Why not rule out the idea of committing U.S. troops? This has been a long-standing argument that the president has made really over the last decade or so, talking about endless wars and not something the U.S. wants. Why not rule out troops?
Because I think the president is very good when he's making deals and negotiating, not to rule out anything, because he wants to preserve that leverage in negotiations. And so I think that's what he's doing here.
Israel's far-right lawmakers are hailing Trump's plan. The Palestinian Authority says the move would be a recipe for chaos. Meantime, here in Washington, Democrats on Capitol Hill are slamming the president's idea, while some Republicans don't seem willing to jump on board so quickly. CNN's Nick Robertson is live with us now for more reaction. In London, Nick, what can you tell us?
Yeah, just last week, Boris, when this was beginning to become an idea that President Trump supported the ideas of pushing out Gazans from Gaza, I spoke to a regional diplomat who said to me, just look at the people in Gaza, the Gazans. They're going back to their piles of rubble. So you know what? We did that today. We sent our cameraman down there to go and talk to them, and they were adamant. They don't want to leave. Here's what they said.
All of our children's homes have been demolished and our house is half destroyed. Rain comes into the house, cold is coming in, and we will still stay whatever happens. Even if we stay in the tent, even if they give us castles and villas, we are not leaving our lands.
I want to die in my land, to stay in it. I was born in Gaza, lived in Gaza, studied in Gaza. I got married here and had my children. Whatever happens, I will never leave it.
And it's not just the people of Gaza who are saying this. We've heard today from the King of Jordan. Jordan's one of the countries that President Trump suggested these Gazans could go to. And he has said, we reject the idea of displacement. We've heard that from the French today, French officials. Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, in Parliament today, answering questions. Got questions about this because it's such a sensitive topic. And he said, look, absolutely, Gazans have a right to go home. They have a right to rebuild their homes, and he said we should be supporting them in that. That is pretty straight up rejection. And I think what is interesting, first out the gate to respond last night were the Saudis, who very quickly said we only support a two-state solution with the Palestinians. They're not taking on Trump on the issue of pushing out Gazans, but it's clear. It's obvious, and I've heard this behind the scenes from diplomats, that if you talk about pushing out the Gazans from Gaza, you end the possibility of a two-state solution. So the message very clear from the region, Boris. Don't do it. It's a bad idea. That's the message.
Nick Robertson, thanks so much. Let's expand the conversation now with CNN military analyst and retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton and CNN Global Affairs analyst Kim Dozier. Thank you both. Always great to see you. Kim, aside from being highly unlikely as a resolution for Gaza, these kind of comments also serve as a recruiting tool for jihadi groups.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the third rail in Middle East politics. You do not fulfill the worst fears of everyone in the Middle East that the U.S. would be on Israel's side in all things by saying something like this. And this will be a recruiting poster for Al-Qaeda, for ISIS, most of all for Hamas. The moment anyone tries to move the Palestinians out of Gaza, you've got something like 2 million Gazans there. More than half of them do not support Hamas right now. But the moment you tell them that you've got to leave because of a U.S. plan backed by Israel, every single one will join Hamas and fight.
So this just isn't going to happen, this thing that Trump is talking about, right? I mean, but it forces everyone to react to it. They have to work through the details of it, why this detail, that thing isn't going to work. Talk a little bit about that, Cedric, and sort of the oxygen that swallows up when this whole thing kind of seems like a futile exercise.
Yeah, this is really interesting just from a psychological standpoint, Brianna, because what you're looking at here is as you mentioned, Kim, this is the third rail of Middle Eastern politics, and what that really means is if you start talking about this kind of thing, then you're not talking about implementing phase 2 of the ceasefire. You're not talking about what comes next. You're not talking about good governance for Gaza or protecting the Palestinians who live there, or frankly the Israelis on the other side of the border.
Or what you do about Hamas.
What do you do about Hamas, because Hamas all of a sudden ceases to exist in this kind of fantasy world that we're living in right now. And if Hamas doesn't exist in the fantasy world, but it exists in reality, then you're going to have a problem, because if you go in there from a military standpoint or a diplomatic standpoint or even a humanitarian standpoint and you don't realize what the threats actually are, you are going into a very dangerous situation that is going to put people not only at risk, but it will kill people.
It's almost as if we didn't live through Iraq, right?
Exactly.
I do wonder, Colonel, the White House keeps talking about bringing in regional partners. What regional partner would support this?
Well, I think certainly Jordan and Egypt are off the table when it comes to this. They're not going to be accepting anybody from Gaza, at least that's what they tell us now, and they've told us that for decades. Then you look at Gulf state partners potentially. One clue might be the Qataris, based on the nuanced expressions from the foreign minister. However, they have not done this up until this point. Nobody has mustered an all-Arab force of peacekeepers. Nobody has come in and said, okay, we're going to take over, we're going to use troops, let's say, from the African Union, or we're going to use troops from the Arab League. None of that has happened. And the UN is not willing to do any of this kind of, these kinds of maneuvers. There's no peacekeeping force like we have in Lebanon, or had at least on the Golan Heights. So this is the kind of thing that we're getting into. It's basically uncharted territory from a diplomatic standpoint, and it's an area where you really can't move forward because there are no structures in place to make it real.
And just to jump in on that, one of the things the Qatari foreign minister was saying, an interesting take, he was emphasizing in public comments today, yes, we Gulf nations need to work together to rebuild Gaza, but right now we're concentrating on phase 2 of the negotiations, as if to say, don't look at all this craziness over here. We're staying focused on the one thing that'll drive us forward. Good attempt. The problem is now that President Trump has said that out loud and his White House press secretary has doubled down on it, the main message it sends is that this administration will not support a two-state solution. Most importantly, that it won't force Israel to make painful territorial sacrifices that would be needed to make two separate states possible.
So that sort of jumps off of Nick Robertson's point. Tell me you don't support the two-state solution without telling me you don't support the two-state solution. Not going to come out and just say that, right?
Yeah.
So what is the, we see what the effect this has on that conversation. Where do you go from there?
Well, one of the things is this does jolt all the operators in the region that, look, this White House doesn't see anyone to talk to on the Palestinian side. So you all have to work together to step in and present a credible option behind closed doors to President Trump. You also have to rush in. The diplomats I've been speaking to, Arab diplomats, former regional diplomats, are like, we got to get to him behind closed doors and make our case to him because the Israelis already beat us to it.
But can I ask you, because it is hard to see who on the Palestinian side would be the one leading the charge in some kind of conversations. So then why is it still important to acknowledge a path forward, even in the absence of making any real progress or being able to at this point in time right now?
Well, one of the main things that Trump wants is expansion of Abraham Accords, and the only way to do that is to get Saudi Arabia to sign on, and Saudi Arabia has said again in the past 24 hours, it is not possible without a two-state solution. So they are holding firm to that, and we're frozen until they move forward.
Yeah, that's going to complicate everything because the Saudis are key to this, and if they don't move forward with this idea, if they stick with the two-state solution idea, which they will, that is going to make this basically untenable.
Kim, Cedric, thank you so much to both of you. Appreciate it.